Okay, we might make a start. Good afternoon. You're attending the social finance and social value session for first afternoon. I hope you ate enough cake to get that sugar high to counteract the food of lunch. Unfortunately, one of our panelists, Sarah Forster, isn't able to join us at the last minute. So I'll be speaking a little bit more as the facilitator for this event. But I'm pleased to say we're joined by Guy Turnbull, who'll be coming up in a moment, and Daniel Brewer from Care and Share Associates and Resonance, respectively. We're not expecting any fire alarms and all the rest, so if we're told to leave, we'll be leaving in short order. Firstly, something about CAN and ourselves, just what my background is, where we're from. I work for a charity and social enterprise that provides premises, skills and finance to other charities and social enterprise in the UK. And we have a few different things that we do. Part of why we've been invited here today is we helped co-found SE UK, and we have a few social investment funds ourselves. One which is fully committed, providing grant, another in the Northeast or the East Midlands, providing mix of grant and loan, and the third, an early intervention fund, providing loan only to charities and social enterprises in East London. We're also a impact advisor. We help organisations understand and measure their impact, both frontline organisations and second-tier organisations, funders and the like. And so I guess, bring a hat as both an investor and sort of analyst of social value and social impact. And so I guess it'll be my job. If Guy and Dan come to blows in the session, I don't think they will, but it'll be me standing in the middle. What I'd like to do is just mention a few things briefly about social value and social finance, and what I'd like to explore in the session. I beg your pardon, I've missed a slide. Go straight to it. First, it's the effect that one has on the other. The role that social value plays in social finance and social investment, and the role that social finance and social investment plays in social value. And I personally believe there's synergies, there's things that work well there, and there are tensions, there are things to watch out for when these two fields or agendas come together. And so I'm hoping to bring out some of that in the session today. And just something very quickly on a couple of intro slides from me. First, definitions. It may come up as a really soft working definition, an idea of what social finance or social investment is, giving money in exchange for something. This is what the investor does, and they want some money back, and they also want to see something good happen. They want to see social value. I'll call that social finance or social investment. And already you can start to see some debates just from that definition itself. Is it only money that the investor gives, or are they trying to give something else as well? And there's the idea of, is it cash plus something else? And this brings up the issue of who's the controller here. If there's lots of investors seeking a small amount of deals, then the investor will need to give more than money. But if that's a seller's market. If it's sorry, the other way around, that's a buyer's market. If it's a seller's market, if the organisation, if there's a dearth of social investment, if there's not much money around, then maybe it is only cash. For social purpose organisations, does that mean charities and social enterprises? Does that include public authorities? Does that include for-profit businesses? And the debate that this might bring up is, do intentions matter on top of behaviour, or is it only behaviour that matters? And there's an ongoing debate there. Financial return. When the investor says they want some money back, do they want all of it back plus interest, or only some of it back? And I believe there's about to be an emerging phenomenon called hybrid finance, hybrid funding, where it's not all the money that the investor wants back, they only want some of it. In other words, they don't make a positive return, they make a negative return, but not of minus 100%, which is grant, you give it and you get none of it back, but somewhere below 1%. There's a debate and there's conversation around that. And the idea of net positive social value, value to whom? And this is a really large one, and I'm looking forward to some discussion with Guy and on this point. Just to outline, because I presume we won't have to cover this again, maybe, is the general thesis is that social finance can help social value by a couple of things there, really bringing more money into the system to help with creation of social value. And there are some of the standard arguments that are put up at a strategic level for what social finance can do for social value. Or at least these are the arguments as I understand them. Something else that they say they can do is help barriers in practical terms with creating impact. There was a report done by SEUK, the People's Business. You can look up the page number if you like on that report. But they're talking about barriers for social enterprises to create social value. And number one was coming out, poor access to finance or funding. Very big, important distinction there between finance and funding, and it's unclear which is being talked about. As a definition, funding, I would say, is funding to actually deliver work. Finance isn't to be used for frontline per se, it's to help you start a new project or to kickstart a process that is then funded by someone else. So finance and funding, two different ideas. We can talk about that more, I'd say. That was number one. And then for cash flow, this was number 2 and 4 for startups and growing social enterprises, respectively. Now, some caveats. They had a fairly small sample. It's only for social enterprises. Maybe this isn't relevant for all social purpose organizations, but it's given you a sense of the fact that there might be a role for social finance in helping to facilitate social value creation. This is going the other way. So not what social finance can do for social value, but what role social value plays within social finance. I've co-convened a working group under the International Social Value International or Social Impact Analysts Association to understand different ways that social measurement play a role in social finance. And we commissioned some research that will be very shortly published from UC Berkeley. And the sorts of things that social value, the sorts of ways that social value measurement impacts on social finance. Bear with me, I'm just pulling up some more detail here. First, in terms of the context of the investment deals, that means things like where's public policy going, what are the actual transactions, and what are the social needs. That's the overriding context in which this occurs. And then purposes for measurement, it's things like, is it actually for accountability, for effectiveness, improving the delivery? Is it for change management, or is it for justification of securing finance? So these are all quite different purposes for which you might be using social value measurement. Methods, it's things like different ways of valuing, all those acronyms like SROI and CBA, cost-benefit analysis, and all those measurements, longitudinal study designs, all that. That's the realm of what sorts of measurement systems are used. Standards of credibility, so of how do you know if the measurement's good? And there are different sorts of standards. You can have technical standards, you can have standards set by policymakers, you can have believability standards of if it's just intuitively believable by different stakeholder groups, or the market, some particular standard, not because it's very good, but just because it's popular, gets taken on as the credibility standard for measurement. Users, stakeholders, this is fairly obvious. Different people that use it, investors, investees, policymakers, commissioners, and heaven forfend, maybe beneficiaries themselves, the people that this is all meant to be about. And types of use, there's different types of reporting, different types of decisions that are being made. So as our discussion progresses, maybe we're referring to different aspects of social value measurement here. We might be referring to different things. I thought it was worthwhile putting up an overall schematic on what we're talking about. And a final slide just on a practical step-by-step of the way that social value, social impact measurement might be used in social finance, whether someone's using it to make a decision to start with, whether they should invest, whether it's used to identify and manage risks, understanding actually the value that's created, tracking progress towards creation of that value, maybe improving the delivery of the activity or the intervention that's hopefully creating social impact, social value, proving impact and how much of it that the investee owns versus everyone else that's working to support the creation of social value, and accountability of whether someone, you owe reporting and you need to report something to someone. So these are all sorts of different stages in which social value measurement might be used in social finance. And we'll see what people's experience are on the ground. So this is just a broad outlay of some of the different pieces involved. And I'll say just my main takeaways from this is that if we're to see how to get the synergies and where the tensions are, how to avoid trouble, we have to be looking at two things. They're very simple questions, but I think the answers can be complicated. The first is, what exactly do we mean by social value when we're talking about it? And different people have different answers that will determine whether social finance might be relevant to them or not. And social finance, what exactly are investors giving? What exactly are they wanting in return? Not just in terms of the deal, but pre-deal in terms of things like doing due diligence and sometimes an arduous process of deciding whether to invest, and also post-investment as well. And just on that point of how arduous it is, social finance is difficult. It's not easy money, it's a lot of hassle. So why bother doing it? When exactly is it the best, is it a very good means of helping to facilitate social finance? Lots of questions, and I'm hoping to explore some of these via our two panels today, and then we'll open up for questions. That's it from me. And first up, I'd like to ask Guy to speak.
Do you mind clicking for me?
Of course. Guy's...
Not like a dolphin.
Yeah, sure. If you haven't met Guy before, he's been involved with a group called Care and Share Associates, a really interesting organisation that have a social franchising model to provide, let's say, care home services, particularly in the north. So Guy took on some social finance himself from an organisation called Bridges Ventures, who are a social investor. And so, Guy, over to you for your experiences.
First slide, please. Next slide. Okay, and next slide. That was me after the due diligence. That was me this morning. When I'm 85 and I've got dementia and somebody's coming into my home every morning to get me out of bed, toilet me, make my breakfast, sit me down, leave me for the day, I want that person to be as best paid as possible, as well trained as possible, and to have a stake in what they do. Okay? I don't want that person to be on a minimum wage. I don't want it to be a different person every day. I want it to be the same way. And that's what CAS is about. It's about creating a culture of employee ownership and engagement, and that's the social impact, and that's the social value. So I can tell you how many poor people we've employed. I can tell you how much we reinvest in communities. But actually, it's about the business model. It's about the business model being better than the private sector at delivering the product. Next slide. So, I've been thinking recently about what we're about, and obviously, we're in crisis. The NHS is shrinking, and the wards are filling up. We're all not dying, So we're all growing old. And actually, the old model of throwing more and more money at it isn't going to work. We need to find another way of doing this. So I think our social impact, over and above creating employment, working in its communities, is actually redefining the relationship between public sector and our sector. Next slide. So I want to talk about our theory of change. Secondly, I want to talk about our CASA model and what we do. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about what it was like to raise social investment. I've only got 12 minutes. So click, click. Okay, that's what we do. Next one. So, we deliver 16,000 hours of care a week. So that's probably about 20,000 visits into individuals' homes. Across 5 territories, close to 150 people, turnover 2.5 million, and we're currently making 450,000. Next slide. I just put that up because I love it. That's when I became managing director. Okay, next slide. Okay, what makes us a social enterprise? What is our social purpose? Don't be shy.
Keeping people in their homes.
No. We're a social enterprise because we're owned by the workers. Okay, we employ them. And that is the heart of our model, because that reduces staff turnover. That's about reinvesting. Care is all about workforce. Get the workforce right, get the skills right. You start actually developing a really good product. Next slide. And if you look at all the really successful social enterprises, their social purpose and their business model are closely aligned. So, big issue is all about creating work for homeless people, raising awareness about homelessness. Their route to market is to employ homeless people as street vendors. Next slide. So, I set up the Shetland Soap Company in a previous life. It was much easier to explain to my kids what I did then. I made soap. So, it cost 28p to make a bar of soap. How much did we sell it for?
£2.50.
£3.50, yeah. And that's brilliant because we will be there as a disability, and it takes him longer. I'm allowed to say this because of my expert motor skills. It takes him longer to make that bar of soap, but we still can pay £8 an hour. And we've got that margin. So it's about using, anyway, so next slide. Back to CASA and theory of change. So, got this huge problem. If you don't understand, if you're not scared by the demographics, you don't understand them. So, next slide. The policy response is about personalisation, deregulation, consumerism, rationing. It's really fierce out there into demand and price. Bit of redesign. That isn't working. Next slide. Next slide. So we've got ambulances queuing. Next slide. Our response is this. And this again is social impact. Workforce is key. No financial leakage. Stick it all back in. Motivate and incentivise the workforce. Very open and transparent with our workforce, with commissioners, with service users. If you ask commissioners, service users, and providers what they want, we all want the same thing. Value for money, quality, transparency. So it's about, again, that social impact is coming up with a neutral solution. Next slide. Okay, just in terms of, I'm older than I look. Certainly feel like it today. Started in 1976 by my current or former chair, Margaret Elliott, OBE, We Have to Bow. And that led Sun and Home Care. And then we set out CASA in 2004 to replicate its success. And now we're one company. Next slide. In terms of social impact, so we feel we got 4, although we're just work-owned, we feel we've got 4 groups of stakeholders. The workforce, about service users, and we measure continuity of care. Commissioners, I had a meeting with the commissioner yesterday and went in with a spreadsheet and said, I can't do this anymore at £10.95. You know, that's where my money goes. You show me how to do it and comply with the minimum wage and pay travel time and deliver a quality service. And being able to do that, because there is nothing to hide, no external shareholders, nobody dragging the profit out, is a very compelling argument. Because he couldn't do it any better. He ends up saying, I see what you say, guy. I see what you mean. Next one. Sorry, that one. Well done. Think about the day
I
job.
think I've got a new job.
6 minutes, 20 slides. So, co-production, co-planning, how we can work together with service users and commissioners to come up with much better products. Let's get away from this whole, we buy that service, we'll commission out, we'll figure that. Let's all sit down and work out, we've done some great stuff. And actually, we've reduced packages. So, just think, we've got life, we support individuals with changing behaviour, learning disabilities. Can you imagine being watched 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? It must be horrible. So, if we can support that, reduce that package, save money for the local authority, improve the actual quality of life for that individual, but at the same time have a relationship with the council that says, I've got some good trained staff here, give me another one. So, next. So I'm going to finish talking 5 minutes about money and social investment. We raised, or got a facility for £1 million, 2010 from British Ventures. We had a target, we wanted to step up a gear. I think we were doing maybe 6,000 hours then, so not a lot. We wanted flexibility, a fresh commercial perspective. My finance director here, the first day of work, you almost cried. Gave you the carry bag of receipts. Said, turn this into a business. Next slide. Okay. Social investment or not, the normal rules of raising money apply. Has anybody come across this before? Campari and soda? Here's what investors look for. Next slide. Character. So when an investor, social or otherwise, looking at the character of the management team, their ability, whether there's a market, why we want the money, how much can we pay it back, level of security, etc. Next slide. What was it like for us? Challenging. I wasn't joking about that first photograph. The due diligence was onerous. 6 months. In required investment pitches, lots of springs to the money. Created a lot of fierce debate within CASA, including changing our name, and rethinking bits of our social franchise model. Next slide. So it wasn't just the money. So it was about, they wanted leadership. Because we were a co-op before the investment. I used to love it. People would ring up and say, who's in charge? I'd say, nobody. And they suggested we needed an executive chair, who became our chief executive. And we did quality red funds next slide. How was it for us? Well, it gave me a kick because I almost lost my job, and in the end I was now the managing director. So it actually kicked me into becoming something I never thought I really wanted to be. You have to give up control. We had to realise we weren't going to get to that next level without British Ventures. I had to start wearing a suit, cut my hair, dog stays at home. But what I've also learned is some of the knee-jerk reaction by the investors was wrong. And sometimes there's an uncomfortable relationship between investment, whether it be social or not, and the social enterprise world. And we did have a wobble, and I felt some of the social indicators went out the window, because everybody was focused on making sure they didn't lose their money. Next slide. So, story continues. Can social investment be? The thing about social impact bonds, which we're looking at the moment, is that it allows for double running. So the problem with the health service is you can come up with new and innovative ways to save money and reduce pressure on the acute, but you need to pay for the acute stuff until you've worked out it works. And there isn't enough money in the system to do that yet. Fiscal changes as ever. As I said in Manchester, we pay £10.90. We're paid £10.95 to deliver an hour of care. Sometimes they want that in 15-minute calls. Now, you can't give dignity. You can put medication maybe, but you can't toilet somebody in a dignified manner. 15 minutes. So there's a whole range of pressures that we need to shift. And finally, procurement changes. I'm very fortunate in that 2 or 3 of our councils have mavericks in them. So they're willing to take a risk or to find a way around procurement law. But it's not the Social Value Act that's made them do that, it's just the kind of people they are. That's nice.
Great. Thank you very much, Graham. Just as 1 or 2 caveats on what he said, Guy's perspective is fairly unique. I'm really pleased that you've shared so openly and honestly, and I'm interested in other views in the room as well when we get to this on experience of social investment. Dan, I'm just thinking now. If you bear with me, I'll try and grab someone to do the presentation. Yes, he is.
So while we're getting my technology, so I was being difficult to sort it out. How many people here are social enterprises who might be interested in getting investment at some point? Okay. And how many are commissioners? More. Second round. Commissioners looking to commissioning services, interested in how investment fits in or doesn't fit into the model. And any investors in the room? Any others? Support organisations or other? Okay, great. So fantastic. Well done, sir. That was very good.
Thank you.
So, second question before I start. How many people who've seen an investment transaction, sort of been close enough to it to know the detail, think that in that particular scenario there was an irreconcilable difference between the investor getting their return and the social value being created? I'll give you the three options and then you can vote. How many people think that it was fine, it was just a cost of capital, it's just another legitimate cost to the business? And how many people think that actually it enhanced the social value of the organisation by taking on the investment? So people who think it was irreconcilable, so this is if you've had an experience of it or you've seen it close up, you think, yeah, okay, that's good. People think there's a conflict, saying they shouldn't be together really, or at least in that scenario. Anyone? Yep, I've seen some of them. Yeah. Anyone who thinks, yeah, okay, it's just part of life. Money, cost of capital, it's okay. Yeah, okay. And people who've seen it enhance the return. Yeah, okay, all right. So more in favour camp. Okay, so Resonance is a company I set up in 2002. If you're into tweeting things, that's who we are. I thought I'd just share a little bit about the organisation and a little bit about some of the deals and things that we've done that look at social impact. And I'll use the term social impact, social value interchangeably today. Just slightly different perspectives and how we look at it from a particular transaction point of view, so we have a particular process. So we have two sides to our business. One is what we call the venture side, so that's corporate finance, consultancy, advice to help social enterprises raise capital. And we help them raise any type of capital, whether it's sort of community shares from retail investors to sophisticated angel investors to helping people access social venture capital funds like Bridges, or foundations who are interested in a particular way, or institutional investors. And then on the other side we have three funds at the moment, and two in construction, where we actually look after a little over £50 million of other people's money, which we then deploy into social enterprises or in specific ways. We only run very niche focused funds, so the bulk of that money is not available to any of you. It's only one of the biggest fund we run is in partnership with a charity called St Mungo's Broadway, let's get that. St Mungo's Broadway is a real lettings property fund, and we buy 1 and 2 bed flats in London and housing homeless people coming out of their breakfast accommodation. So it's a very simple equity model. We've raised institutional money, buying about £1 million worth of flats a week in London to house people who are basically stuck in the bed and breakfast system. Then we have two community loan funds, one called Community Share Underwriting, which basically match funded community share issues, and the second one, the Affordable Homes Rental Fund, which is about community-led housing solutions, so relatively small scale. And the venture side of things, we have basically three products. Our kind of social enterprise diagnostics, which is our let's get to know each other, let's look at your social impact, let's look at your business model, let's do an analysis of your financials. And then if we think after that, yeah, we both like each other and we want to work together to try and raise some capital, we engage through an investment readiness consultancy to look at how we can articulate the pitch and find the right sort of investors. And then we're FCA authorised deal arrangers to pull those kind of big deals together as well. So that's the business. At our core, our vision is to see a world where capital serves people and communities rather than people and communities serving capital. Our way of doing that is about connecting all types of capital, so that's both kind of intellectual capital and human capital and other types of social definitions of capital with the enterprises, including money, obviously. And we sort of went through an exercise this time last year, just trying to articulate the values of the organisation. So we really try and be the bridge to make it happen rather than trying to build something. So I get as excited about the 50 grand angel deal as I do about £50 million funds. They're both tools to get something done that's meaningful and impactful. Okay. I'll make this available I'll tweet the link or something and people can have a look at it. So 3 very different types of deal. I thought I'd start first with a deal that we closed at the end of last year called Social Enterprise in Bristol called Fair Share Southwest. It happens to be the first social investment tax relief deal, our first ever global first, right? Where we worked with a small group of angel investors to back a small but growing charity in Bristol that was taking food surplus, often being badly labelled and was going to get landfilled, and or a forklift had knocked the pallet, and so it was suddenly unsafe to go into the warehouse and or for the to go to the retail, and you think, oh my gosh, there's nothing wrong with this pallet of Pringles apart from one of the boxes slightly dented, and it was going to go and get dumped because it was easier to do that than process lots of dented Pringles boxes. Probably it wasn't Pringles. And then they have a membership model which makes that food available to vulnerable individuals or organisations working with vulnerable individuals across the city. And they came to us saying, well, we're doing that, that's fine, but we've got actually more food than we need, and we've got our own chef, and how can we want to grow our kind of catering arm, and they've done a couple of festivals. And found they could do actually a fine dining experience, and I've seen freshly packed partridge, in date, all of this food is in date, sitting in their cold room going, oh my gosh, this was surplus food, and you would not believe quite how much surplus food goes into a hole in the ground. So they wanted to use this and repurpose it at value, and they also wanted to stop having to write lots and lots of grant funding applications to help them do that, and they had a sustainable business model, but they needed some capital, and so we arranged that. But core to that was going through a process of getting them to clearly articulate their social impact, and I'll talk about that in a bit in a minute. So our community land trusts, this is affordable homes for community-led housing. If I'm honest, the affordable housing bit is important, but it's really a means to an end. If you're just interested in affordable housing, you don't do housing like this. You do mass scale, L&Q, £4 billion, let's build 4,000 homes a year and scale model. But that serves a certain type of need. It doesn't serve all the needs, and often there are people who feel that their community is lost to them. So this movement of community land trust saying, well, we want to do 6 houses in our village in Rock in Cornwall, where the earnings to house price ratio is not 1 to 5, not 1 to 10, but 1 to 20. And so the idea of ever owning your own home, or frankly even renting your own home that's of any quality at all, is ridiculous. And so loads of people got together and said, okay, it's a bit of land, can we put some housing on that? Yes, you can, but only if it's affordable housing for local people, and you start there. And there just wasn't a product out there to make that happen. The banks couldn't do it without grant subsidy, and we created a loan product, first charge mortgage product, but it had a very flexible repayment structure that meant it wasn't reliant on grant. But in terms of how we measure impact on it, we look at both the potential for a project to achieve these impacts, and then monitor each of them going forward. So it's a very specific product for a very specific type of organisation, and therefore you either kind of fit or you don't fit. We scale each of these at 5 areas. So community leadership. So we're really considering, is this some developer who's saying, oh, there's a community land trust, but actually it's just a developer or a housing association doing it. So we want to see evidence that people are putting their time in, that they really want this in the community, that they're engaging their neighbours and others, saying, look, this will be good for us because we'll benefit. Our children and grandchildren will be able to stay connected to the area. Security of tenure, so again, the idea of a sustainable community, people being there for a period of time. Additionality, adding to the community, so not just buying a post office and turning it into a house. You've got to be adding some additional space. Affordability, obviously, and community sustainability. So this is about the local shop or the local school. Is it going to actually keep a wider diversity of people in there? So it isn't just people out of work and older people who are housed in this, but actually there are some people who have children and have jobs and are going to be economically scheme. So we report on that every year, and this, in fact, it's only just come out as our social impact report. So this is what we give out to investors, but it also shows to our borrowers that actually we care about the things that they tell us. Okay, it's only a glossy document to build interest in the movement, but it just shows how a little bit of money that we've put into, we've made sort of £7 million worth of offers, which has unlocked about £24 million worth of deal flow, which is something we're quite proud of. And then the Real Estate Property Fund, which I talked about a little bit. So this is an extract from our other one. So I only have one of each of these, but whoever gets it first, if you want them, you're very welcome to have it. So our social impact report, which looks at the stories of the individuals who are progressing through the home. So it's not just about creating a house for an individual that then we forget about. It's actually that they move on. So we look at 3 areas. Improving housing opportunities. So are they more marketable as a tenant? Have they built up a deposit? We can give them 6 months tenancy references, 12-month tenancy references, say, look, actually these guys are good tenants. They may be on housing benefit, but they look after the flats. They're progressing towards work. So it's not that we're measuring do they get work or not. And we're very clear that that's not something that we celebrate. There are 8, at this stage there were 8 people in work, but they're sort of part-time, low-paid jobs. It's not an objective for us to get them into work. What we want to see is that they're moving towards that. Really, because people in work is much more a function of the economy than it is about the strength of whether or not the house is in order. And the third is about resilience against becoming homeless again. So there are 2 things there. One is about personal financial management. There is a common thought that I had, and many people do, that poor people are bad managers of money, which is a lie. Poor people are much better managers of their money than wealthy people. It's just that there is a subset of now poor people called homeless who are particularly bad at managing their money. A 98% correlation between poor personal financial management and homelessness, and that's because they were either poor or not poor, and had a trauma and lost control of it, and they were in denial, so they didn't know how to manage their finances, and that's why they became homeless. It wasn't that they were lazy or otherwise. So we look at ways of pointing them to looking after their personal finances, their budgeting skills, and also around social integration as well. So who are they? Are they reconnecting with their family or people in the area? Okay, so how do we approach it? Nearly there. The first thing is to articulate the social impact. We are constantly frustrated that organisations come to us and say, oh, we are a charity working with children with autism, therefore we are doing good. I said, well, the problem is that I know some charities that work with children with autism who locked a 18-year-old in a padded cell because that was the appropriate solution that they could cope with his challenging behaviour. So they were inappropriately dealing with somebody. So just the fact that you are working with children with autism doesn't mean that what you are doing is appropriate for them. So don't tell me what you do, tell me how what you do makes a difference, and you've got to be able to articulate that. The next job is to align it with investors. So you don't go and talk to an investor who cares about homelessness in the east of England if actually what you're good at is green energy or community energy in the southwest. You create a disconnect that actually is more aggressive than it was if you were just talking about a financial transaction. Then actually you have to go around and measure it. You can't just talk about it, you have to evidence that the transformations are happening, and then you have to communicate it. And then the bit that often people forget is that you then reflect, is this still the right measure? Is this still our mission? Is this still, or has it changed? You know, Guinness was set up to deal with a problem where you either died in Ireland from drinking dirty water, or you died from drinking too much spirits. And so they created a health drink. We know it now as Guinness, but at the time it fulfilled a function, and it was a very deliberate social purpose business that existed with an impact. Problem is that they cleaned up the water system, And Guinness never went through this process of looking back and saying, well, what do we actually care about? How can we re-envisage it? They had another strategy which was okay. They thoroughly exited and they built the Guinness Housing Trust, and that's great. But the business itself stopped being a social purpose business. So we use a tool called the Transformational Index. Put the website up there for you if you look at it. It's kind of part game, part psychometric test. And you have a set of cards where you work out the kind of 5 or 6 key transformations that are relevant to you, and you then work through a way of how could you evidence those particular changes doing and how do they relate to one another, and then how you might measure that in a way that is meaningful first and foremost to you as a management team, not investors. So we're much more interested in if this information is good to you as social enterprises, then it might just become useful to us as investors. But we're fighting as hard as we can there's a sort of big movement amongst social investors saying, oh, we need an all aggregated social impact measurement model that we can judge everybody on the same thing. And we say, well, that may come, but please, it's not going to come for another decade. And if you force it, you'll actually be measuring the wrong things. But there is a challenge back to us as a social enterprise sector. Last slide. Transformation should be the dominant lens through which the social sector is looked. And that includes impact investors. Should be the main thing that we look at. And there are many instances of social enterprises going, oh, I talked about social impact, and then we spent in one afternoon, and then we spent the next 6 months going through the financial due diligence, and it never came up again. And there's this real frustration. But actually there wasn't any data to look at. But social investors aren't disinterested. They just completely bought it. They went, yeah, you have great social impact, now we need to look at the financials. And I didn't need to look at it again. And it's quite difficult for social enterprises to accept that, but it is also a challenge to us as in the social enterprise sector to say, well, maybe we need to give them a bit better data. Maybe we ought to give them a bit of a challenge to say, well, yes, we work with children with autism, but we do it in this way, and this is how we can prove it. And so when they're looking at a deal, they're going, oh my gosh, well, this other charity working with children with autism is got nothing like this. How do we know they're actually helping? And so we can drive up the quality of investment decisions by sharing the kind of information that we want to. And that is it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Can I get you both to come up, please? So a lot to think about there. I thought I would ask just a couple of questions myself and then open up to the floor, and we've got about 25-30 minutes. First, a question for Dan. And I'm asking this in your role as an intermediary, as someone in a sense that sits between social enterprises and charities and social purpose organisations and investors, which is, have you seen that these two groups generally perceive social value differently? Do they tend to focus on different things or understand social value differently? And if so, what are the consequences for when you're trying to bring them together?
So investors and social enterprises, do they see social value differently? I mean, I think everybody sees social value differently in one sense. We all have our own theory of change, of how to make the world a better place. That's why we take the jobs we do or invest the money that we have for the things that we care about. And that's to be encouraged. And certainly as an intermediary, we don't try and project one particular way of changing the world to make it a better place as better than others. What we try and do is articulate something that's clear, and actually get investors to articulate what's important to them, and then go, okay, is there a good values match here? And if there is, then there's a transaction in the making. And if there isn't, we don't try and sell it because it just falls apart.
Guy, when you were trying to secure investment, not just with Bridges, more generally, were you coming across this issue at all? That was there a disalignment between the people you spoke with on social value or not?
I don't think there is at all. I think I've got, if you set yourself out as a social enterprise, you need to be able to evidence what social impact you're having. So I've got no problem with that. And I think it's not enough to say, oh, we're a social enterprise, therefore give me the contract or give me the money. You need to be able to demonstrate the transformation and the impact. And one thing Bridges did bring was that kind of rigour, actually, those social impact scorecards. So although we instinctively knew what we think was good, it's good to be able to evidence it and to work out. But I agree with Dan, there's no, I think if we all wait for one aggregate, it won't come. I think it's just that, it's sitting down with the investor and agreeing what makes sense and what doesn't. I mean, I must admit, we're just going around doing another round of investment currently. And one of the investors seems to be asking quite a lot. And maybe for that reason we wouldn't pursue that investment, because if it starts to drag down other bits of the business, there's no point. It can't be too much of a cost.
Just wanted to open up questions. We'll take it in groups of 3 maybe, and then we'll ask them. Yes. When you start, could you say your name and
Leslie
what you
Alton,
call?
I'm curious to know, this is for Dan, how do I put this? So your field, your pot, your cauldron of investors, how do you vet them? What concerns me is that this is just going to be another place to invest any money, because it's hot right now.
Okay.
And so, how do you make sure that your investors are in it for the right, for the right reasons?
Yeah. Okay. So really,
just take a
go on,
couple
yeah.
more in case.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Ron? If not, right, over to you then.
So it's a great question, and we try as hard as we can to get to know investors. One of the values that we stuck up that you probably didn't have time to read is about creating relationships. But we do it one transaction at a time. We really want to get to know people. We only really get to know people and what their motivations are. And motivations is the key word, by trying or looking at examples of what they could and couldn't do. And there's only so much you can do that without getting paid before you sort of work it through. We would love to, and we've done it a couple of times, sit down with investors and work out what their transformational theory of change is. But very few of them are up for doing that, certainly not paying for it. So the way that we protect against mission drift or misalignment is, again, to put the onus back on the social enterprise and say, look, when you're selling, don't sell your investment product. You need to make it very clear that your purpose, that your mission, that the non-negotiable for you is that, whatever it is. You explain that's your theory of change, and you're asking the investor to buy into that with a business model behind it. Not buy into my business model and we're doing this thing over here. It has to be, which is why every time we engage a social enterprise on a consultancy basis, the first thing we do is the transformational index. We want to know that their business model aligns with their impact objective, that their financials align with it. And if we make it a clear pitch to the investor, then they might not yet know that their heart's in the right place, but they have bought into the pitch, which includes they're bought into that business because of what's there. They may not care about it, and that probably is the difference between the definition of a social investor and not the price of capital, but whether their intent or their cares about that. And you just need to make sure in that getting to know one another that there isn't an additional risk around loss of control or mission drift, that when something goes wrong, they take you off piste, and that's a real danger.
Guy, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
No? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, the gentleman there.
My name's Richard Nicola, Midlands Together, which is a social business which has got social investment. Well, I was interested in your comment about losing control. Is that something that has materially changed the way that you run things?
Well, we when we took the investment on, we'd gone, when we set up in 2004, we'd gone 2004 to 2010, we'd grown from 0 to 6,000-7,000 hours. 5 territories, pretty marginal businesses, and I felt we needed not just money, we needed support to actually turn this from, because my PhD is in geography, not business. So I could tell you where my branches were, but that was about it. So, I'd never operated a multi-site business before. So the investment was, although there were some strings, that was very much outweighed by the commercial approach and expertise Bridges brought. And I say very clearly every time I do this, without the Bridges investment in 2010, I don't think we'd be here today. I think they brought a lot into the mix. So does that answer you? But in terms of specifically losing control, part of taking the money was, one, I made some glib comments about leadership, but I recognised we did need that. And so we agreed to have an executive chair, so hold us to account. And they also they nominated a non-exec director. So we'd gone from quite a small cooperative as the franchisor to, losing control on the board or some control and allowing to be led.
More accountability.
Yeah. And, that was part of the deal. And we all signed up to that, and we all realised we needed actually to do that to get us from where we were in 2010 to where we are now.
This is gentleman here.
So, James Allsworth, 311 CIC. Rohan and Guy, question for both of you really. So, Rohan, in your presentation you mentioned about Social Stock Exchange and your role as a social impact business advisor. So the Social Stock Exchange is being set up to establish a transparency for social enterprises to raise funding, but they've also got a standard values in which to measure social value or social impact. Is that the starting place in which to create that baseline of understanding what the measurement is for social value, even though it will develop over time? But as an exchange, that's what it's set up for, isn't it? That's the place where you start.
Yeah, sure. The Social Stock Exchange is based here in London. The London Social Stock Exchange is a portal onto other stock exchanges. It's not a stock exchange in its own right. So what it does is it provides, it's like a membership body. Yes?
It will be a stock exchange. It is listed on ISDEX, the ICAP, ISDA. So it is an exchange. It will be listing bonds and equity on this exchange as well.
Okay. Fine. Stand corrected. No. So when we were working with them 2 years ago, it was a portal onto other stock exchanges such as the London Stock Exchange or AIM, and when we set up the impact measurement system or reporting for them, it was to try and encourage organizations to report on their social value credentials, and to do this in a way that was hopefully improves transparency for audiences that would otherwise not understand what these companies are doing for social value. It was quite difficult actually. There was lots of conversations on what form this reporting should take. Should there be common metrics, common outcomes that are reported on? Should there be a common process that you go through to measure impact? Or should there be a common template through which you report? These are big debates of should you have standardization at outcome level, at process level, at reporting level. In the end, and it was very early, we've got to say this, the pace of change is quite fast. So a couple of years ago, we decided on the reporting framework as being the common, because it was so early in the piece. What the framework sets up is a standard way of reporting, more or less, with common headers, and the organizations had to report against this as part of their application to join the Social Stock Exchange. So that's fairly basic, if I'm honest, as a starting point. and things are moving on quickly from there. But we're still really at the early stages as a sector of to what extent you have minimum frameworks. The Social Stock Exchange has set some sort of benchmark there, and I look forward to seeing if others can take this up as well. As the Social Stock Exchange is developing, their benchmarks, I think over time, are slowly getting higher as the space moves on, and it's providing one benchmark among others.
Can I just?
Guy, did you want to
Sorry.
add anything to that
No,
since he
I
asked that? No.
I just, you asked the question, is it a good starting point? And for me, it's a really bad starting point to start with, oh, look, this is what somebody else is measuring. Should I measure myself against them, however basic or otherwise? That is the wrong starting point. The right starting point is work out what you do and why you do it, and whether you can measure anything as an organisation that evidences that the change are happening. And then you can go, okay, well, these are the things that are important to me. Are there equivalents out there that I can draw on? And have we missed anything? I think. But if you start with, which is the normal way of doing it, if you start with, oh, look, they're measuring this, why don't we measure that? You end up another form of tail wagging the dog, and measuring things that frankly are completely wrong. We had one organisation come to us who was interested in tackling dementia, and we said, so what sort of impact measures are you doing? And they said, oh, well, job creation and our carbon footprint. And we're like, well, they're completely irrelevant. Why are you doing that? Well, that's because what people did. And we thought, oh my gosh, you've got to start all over again on that. So it's not the starting point to look at somebody else's measurement system. The starting point is to work out what's a useful management tool for you as an organisation, so that you can check that you're doing the things that you care about, and then you can work out what the system of measurement or reporting is behind that.
To clarify, the Social Stock Exchange is not asking for common measures of outcomes. They're not saying everyone should report on the same things. What they've set up is a common template for the reporting, that whatever you report on, and you would report on all sorts of different things, it should follow this format of reporting.
Okay.
It's not asking for common measures. Just to clarify,
Great.
I wasn't clear on that. Guy, did you want to say
Yeah,
something
well,
on this?
just say it's about integrating it into your management system. So we have a weekly dashboard which each of our branches provides, and that measures a whole range of commercial, financial, service user quality, a whole range of things. And it allows us to manage the branches, to foresee problems coming up, or whether it be, so things will measure our volume, continuity of care, staff turnover, the average hours carers are doing, etc., etc., any safeguarding, quality issues, and it's about linking employee incentivisation via the share scheme and the bonus scheme with also quality triggers. So it's not just about finance, not just about quality, it's everything together and getting it into one management tool.
Other questions? Yes, up the back there.
I've got a question maybe to start with Guy, I think. Well, one of the problems seems to be that what good looks like in public sector, from a scrutiny and audit perspective, doesn't include any of the things that you talked about. So how do we go about changing the capacity and scrutiny committees and audit bodies so that they start to measure and value the things that you bring forward?
It's difficult because I often, because currently we're a business and they're our customer, and so although you can advise on how they might want to do things a bit differently, you don't want to. First of all, the business is you're there to solve a problem, not create new ones. So until we actually develop genuine partnership working, genuine co-production, it's quite a tough one to do.
One thing I'd like to add just on that, there's some interesting work out of the EU with social impact measurement, and it actually ties into this issue or debate around standardization, where there will be increasing obligation for public money to be spent where someone has a process for measuring their impact. Not common indicators for measuring impact, but a robust process of measuring impact. And if that kicks off and that starts to be imposed in a way from EU downward to national governments, that's something that's changing over the coming couple of years. So I'm saying this because it's an unexpected direction. People may not think of European Commission as being relevant here, but there's something happening there, and obviously we'll see where the Social Value Act goes, if its teeth are added to it.
And you're seeing it already in tender documents. Any public contract that's tendered, you can see the footprint of social impact and environment.
One of the warnings, it's not quite an answer to your question, I don't think, but that we found when we took a client who was competing for the Transforming Rehabilitation exercise, and it was all about reducing reoffending, and that was it. And we took them to an impact investor, and said, "Oh yes, we can reduce reoffending by doing this and that and that." And the impact investor said, it was a charitable foundation, said, but what's the social impact? And they kind of went, what do you mean? We're reducing reoffending? I said, well, that's really just about saving the state money for not putting people through the prison. We want to know what you're doing, and I'm sure you are, but just what are you doing to help that individual and their family's lives so that the quality of life and engagement with the community is real and not just it. Because frankly, you could shoot that person and then they wouldn't reoffend, and you'd get your output, okay, you'd go to prison as well.
I can
But you
see
could
Twitter going alive here.
yeah, the fact is that if you get paid on saving the state money, then you can create an alternative perverse incentive in another way. And it's not that heretical to say it, because this was Serco and G4S who started claiming for people who had died. So it's not they killed them. It's just they were charging the government for. Yeah, that's right. we believe them. So it's just not to confuse those.
I can't help but saying this is raising the issue of things like payment by results and social impact bonds, which are basically tying social value to outcomes for particular commissioners, public authority commissioners. I'll be interested in, so this is longer term, of how do we maintain social value outcomes? What role will social finance, or can it or should it play in maintaining social value if it means something different from savings to the state? Just a broad question, but I'd love your thoughts on it both.
We're kind of playing with the idea at the moment around hospital admission avoidance. So if somebody gets admitted to hospital, it costs about £1,800, and typically, and doctors, proper doctors, not proper ones like me, have told me privately, somebody turns up at surgery on a Friday afternoon, got a mix of health problems and social care problems. They can either send them to hospital or try and treat them in the community. If they try and treat them in the community, it's their risk. Whereas they might be playing golf at the weekend, they might have other plans. So it's easy just to phone up an ambulance, get that person taken to hospital, not their problem. And that will cost a huge amount of money, both in terms of the admission. If the person has dementia, for example, it's unlikely that they're more likely then to go into residential. It takes a lot longer. People with dementia tend to stay in hospital for a lot longer time. Somebody told me, and I'm not sure whether this is true, so I'll preface this, but somebody who should know because she works a lot with the NHS litigation service. 1 in 10 interactions with the NHS results in an adverse reaction. That's amazing, isn't it?
Wow.
So you don't really want to go into hospital in the first place because you're going to catch something, and so if we can come up with community-based services which are rapid response, which avoid admission, keep people stable and secure in their own homes, that's going to save money, and and provide a better outcome for services in the first place. The trick is, or the problem is, how do you fund the double running? Because just by stopping one person going into hospital actually doesn't close a ward, so it still costs the same amount of money. So we're looking at social impact bonds. If we can use social impact bonds as a way of actually creating that service, demonstrate it works, demonstrate the savings, and then over time use CCG to commission. So I think there is a role for them, but it's early days.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it's an incredibly powerful tool, and I think particularly double running. And we're looking at a model of social impact bond payment by results, working with people who are with learning disabilities, who are living in inpatient settings, and there are still 2,000 people with learning disabilities who are living in hospital and have been there for more than 12 months, and 600 have been there for more than 5 years. And it's just completely inappropriate. And yet you can't take them out because you can't pay for them the service to be ready. It has to be staffed and ready for in the supported living facility, and that costs money. And who's going to pay for that? And the transition itself costs money and needs project management. But a social impact bond could work to do that. You inject about £3 and you get £5 back in terms of saving within the first 18 months, and then you save that £5 every year thereon in. So there are ways of making it work. The key thing is to make sure that the payment by results is not just triggered on savings to the state. It has to be triggered on savings to the state because it has to work economically, but it can't just be that. It has to also be focused on the specific, the outcomes for the individual and their family. And you can just split it out, saying, well, you get a payment for savings and you get a bit of a payment for progression.
Got time for 2 more questions. So one here.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something because maybe I don't understand this the way I should. So I never got the impression that pay by results was necessarily only about saving the state money. I mean, I always thought, maybe this is my idealistic point of view, but that it was also about finally making companies and providers, no matter what size they are, and I think this is largely pointed toward the larger ones, forgive me if you're in the room, as accountability. I mean, this is like we're no longer going to pay you this huge sum of money without any kind of accountability around what you've actually gotten done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that has trickled down to the SMEs and those of us who, are now looking at that as well. I believe the SMEs also have responsibility to show, be transparent about how they have impacted, particularly if we are social enterprises.
Yeah.
So am I seeing this
Sure.
not correctly, or?
And one last question, if anyone else has it. And just quickly, Dan, if you want to answer that, and then any final thoughts?
It's a great question. I mean, I think the ideology was always there for progressive goods, and that somehow we have got the wrong, as the state have got the wrong solution, and there's a better solution out there. But it's quickly become, this is a fashion to do it, and often it's done in inappropriate settings because we just want to subcontract out. There's then the investors are sometimes blamed for profit extraction of the state, which has no money, and this is another form of encouraging a privatization agenda under the guise of cuts, but really you're talking about innovation. So it gets very confused, and the way to stop it from being confused is to stay true to the ideology of let's keep the individual, the family, the beneficiary, the whole picture at the centre. It's why I was really impressed that Cabinet Office and Lottery got together and did this Better Outcomes Commissioning Fund, I think it's called. And you think actually this is a bit of central money that's trying to get 2 different commissioners perhaps to align, health and social care or whatever it might be, so that you get smart commissioning, not savings for one department that then costs another department. And some of the social impact bonds that exist are so complicated in terms of proving the economic model that they create various thresholds that mean it's frustrating, and then all about driving down costs, and particularly the ones that go out to tender. So you're not wrong, and that's definitely where it started. But there are inappropriate places for payment by results contracts, and appropriate places, and it's not one for everything.
Guy, any final words from you?
Yeah, just say
before
that
we close?
payment by results did create huge cash flow difficulties for smaller providers, and actually excluded smaller providers from going for some contracts. You need to be quite careful about how it's used.
I hope that session's been interesting and useful for you. If you could join me in thanking our two panelists. And it's, well, on to the next session.
Cup of tea, surely.
Good.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, for me.